Hey guys, PepperAmmy here. This week we are taking a look at a recipe from a game, and that game is called What Remains of Edith Finch. Now, as I was playing the game this week, I noticed a open recipe book in the kitchen with a apple pie recipe in it, so I thought to myself, why not? So here it is. Now, this recipe of course calls for a pie crust, because it's a pie, so we're going to have to make that first. Now for the pie crust, you're going to need 320 grams of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 1 tablespoon of salt, 230 grams of cold firm cubed butter, and 1 cup of ice water, aka water with ice cubes. Now start by adding the flour, the salt, the sugar into a bowl or a food processor. Now if you are doing this by hand, you may want to use forks rather than your fingers, as the goal here is to keep the butter as cold as possible. And by mixing with your hands, you are obviously adding in heat to the butter. Now if you are going to do this in a food processor, you can even put the blades in the freezer for 10 minutes to make them nice and cold. You want to add your butter in a little at a time, and once all the butter has been added, you should have a dough that roughly resembles coarse breadcrumbs. Now this is where the ice water comes in. You want to slowly add in 1 tablespoon of water at a time until the dough just starts to come together and hold its shape. Then you want to lightly flour a work surface, pour the dough out and form into a ball, making sure the dough can hold its shape. Split in half. Now this doesn't have to be an absolute 50-50 split, as you can always use the larger half of the dough to line the pie dish and the smaller for the topping. Then you want to take your 2 halves, spin them into a disc, flatten to about 1 inch tall, and then wrap in cling film and place in the fridge for at least 2 hours, but you can leave it up to 5 days. Now for the apple filling, the recipe calls for 6 cups of apples. Now I'm going to transfer that into 6 to 7 Granny Smith apples. Then we need 2 tablespoons of water, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, half a cup or 100 grams of sugar, half a cup or 100 grams of brown sugar, 3 tablespoons of flour, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground ginger. Now I used 1/4 of a teaspoon as I like ginger and I don't have a measuring spoon that goes small enough. And then 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Once again, I just used a pinch of salt. And now comes the fairly easy part for me, as I can just quote the recipe. In a saucepan, combine the apples with the water and lemon juice. Cook over a medium-low heat just until the apples are tender, and remove from the heat, let cool but not drain. Then in a large bowl, combine the sugars, the flour, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the ginger, the salt, and add the apples and toss to coat. Now as they did not say this part, here it is. Remove your dough from the fridge, roll it out just big enough to line your pie plate, dish, or even cast iron skillet. I also lightly buttered my cast iron skillet to prevent it from sticking. Then add in your bottom pastry, add the apple mixture, cover with the top pastry, seal and flute the edges, and then you want to cut some vent slits in the top crust. Now I had some extra dough that was too warm to re-roll in shape, so I just made a snake and put it around the outside to make a thicker crust, and then sprinkled over a little brown sugar. And then bake the pie at 340 degrees Fahrenheit or 230 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes. Reduce the heat to 350 or 180 degrees Celsius, and then bake for a further 35 to 45 minutes, or until golden brown. And the yield is 6 to 8 servings. Now, I let my pie cool slightly before serving, as anyone that's had a McDonald's apple pie knows, apples plus sugar equals a molten mess. And then I simply served mine with a spoon of vanilla ice cream on the side. And I must say, this is one of the best apple pie recipes I've ever eaten or even made. Now, even the spices were just right, and the apples were nice and tender but not mushy, and the pastry in a cast iron pan turned out absolutely great. Now, What Remains of Edith Finch was an amazing game. I'm currently playing through it for a second time, and I had to record part of it for this intro of the video. But I hope you guys do consider checking out the game. This video is no way sponsored, it is just a game that I played on a whim. It was amazing, I found a recipe book, it's just a great game in general, and it came with an amazing recipe. So thanks for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, let me know down below with a like and a comment. If you are new here, feel free to subscribe, it helps me out a lot, and you get free weekly cooking content. Thanks for watching.